This is evaporator. In the evaporator, as the name suggests, evaporation happens. See, this is basically a coil for heat transfer. Evaporator. Before learning the evaporator, let's learn how does cooling happens. To understand, let us take one example. This is a spirit. The spirit has a special property of evaporation. At normal pressure and temperature, it starts evaporation. Now if you take some drop of spirit on your palm, after a couple of seconds you will see your palm gets cold. Now how does it happen? Let's try to understand. The spirit has a normal properties of evaporation. Now what do you think? Where from it gets the latent heat of vaporization? It takes the heat from your palm and gradually the palm losing heat. Losing heat means the temperature will be down and palm gets cold. Let's try to understand these things in a simple diagram. This is the palm and this is the spirit. Here evaporation happens. Now this is the contact surface where from the spirit takes the heat for evaporation. So the palm loses heat and gets cold. Now if we consider this portion, instead of palm air, and here it is instead of spirit it is refrigerant. Let's see what happens. Refrigerant has a properties like spirit. Normal pressure and temperature, it starts evaporation, and latent heat of vaporization it takes from the air. So air loses heat and gets cold. So this is the pipe. So this is the refrigerant pipe. Normally it is made of copper. Refrigerant is passing through this pipe and heat transfer happens. Let's try to understand how heat transfer happens through the refrigerant pipe. This is the liquid refrigerant, and outside refrigerant pipe is hot air, and refrigerant takes heat from the hot air and refrigerant transferred into vapor, and by losing heat air becomes cold. Let's see the transformation of refrigerant and air. So here cold refrigerant changed into hot refrigerant and hot air changed into cold air by losing heat to refrigerant, and this thing happens in evaporator. So basically a heat exchange happens between refrigerant and air in the evaporator. Let's see the evaporator at a glance to clear the basic concept. So this is basically a cooling coil made of copper, and it is like a coil shape to increase the surface area so the more heat transfer can happen. And you see this is the fin. Fin is provided to increase the surface area. Look at the fin from the closer look. Normally it is made of copper and sometimes it can be made of aluminium fin as well. Let's see how does it work. So this is the evaporator coil. Cold refrigerant enters in the evaporator coil and it takes the heat from the surroundings air, and it becomes heated and forms liquid plus vapor. Look at this portion. Here liquid refrigerant change into liquid plus vapor and temperature is increased, and after that it takes more heat and finally it becomes refrigerant vapor, and by taking heat it becomes saturated vapor, and again taking heat it becomes slightly over superheated vapor, and it leaves from the evaporator coil. So in the refrigeration cycle we have learned the basic concept about the evaporator.